Why, hello. Ich bin in der Kirche, Jung. Was willst du machen? Ich bin in der Kirche, Jung. Und du nien lache. Setting things up. Ich bin auch sonst nicht schlecht. Nee, ich bin brav. Mein Lieblingswörtchen hieß Kölle Alaf. Buongiorno. How is everyone? Yo. How are y'all? I have tried to lubricate the chair, but I can't figure out what part squeaks because all the parts that are exposed, I lubricated. I took the whole thing apart. I put WD-40 everywhere, but I don't know what. I have the feeling it's the part that connects the backrest to the bit I sit on. Anyway, I'll try to not move. Hello. Welcome to the non-moving episode of Hanging Out with SBREBROWN. Welcome, welcome. Yes, Ellen, trust me, it will all be revealed. Just waiting for a couple of people to show up. Right now there are 21 people. Usually we get a bit more, so just hang out. How is everybody doing? Hello from Russia. Hello. Hello from Russia. Well, hello from Canada to Russia. How's everyone doing? There's a lag, isn't there? So I have to wait. I have to fill this time. Otherwise, it's just a silence broadcast. Although we could do this. I have this beautiful Red Deer Museum and Art Gallery, the MAG. We could do a ASMR again. Okay, maybe not. Maybe this. Yeah. Letter opener from La Bamble's gift. Wasn't it lovely? Lovely, yeah. Oh, we have two people from Nova Scotia. I know Ellen was there. I didn't know Nibsy was there. And Germany, Tennessee, Portugal, Russia. Pen Friends got a new pen, Shown Design. That's a nice pen. I am currently oogling the Optima Viola. Any opinions on the celluloid? Well, it's pretty celluloid. It's nice purple. I always kind of want to see those things in person, though, because it wouldn't be I'm not saying that would be the case for this pen, but it wouldn't be the first case that I see a beautiful celluloid or material online, and then I get it, and I think, that's not what it looked like online. Anyway, that's a problem. So it looks good to me, but I haven't held one, so there is that. Singapore, Mexico. Örebro, Sweden. I hope I have not butchered that, but I like the way that sounds. Örebro. What else do we have? If you could only have one pen for the rest of your life, what would that be? Well, it really depends. I have some pens that I'm very fond of, but they have different purposes. So there is, for example, the Visconti Opera Master, which is an all-time favorite because it is such a lovely writer. Nib tuned by Mike Masayama, beautiful pen, nice size, nice weight, bit heavy. For some people, maybe a bit too heavy. I'm turning the capping into an ASMR experience just for you. right? But that's a lovely pen. That would be a very good everyday writer. Conid bulk filler. I don't know if I can really pick one, but Conid bulk filler, the king size, beautiful pen. Also lovely. Also a bit heavy because of the titanium in the back end, but very, very comfortable pen. Lovely writer. I really enjoy that. Yeah, and there are probably others. Even something like this. This is very fancy because of the finish. But Aldwin, every time I use the Aldwin, the classic, I am blown away by how wonderful a writer this pen is, because it really is a very, very pleasant writer. And oh, that's a bit squeaky, isn't it? Sorry if the microphone picked that up. This is the Arco, so it's a bit fancier, but they have way more affordable, or relatively more affordable models, and they are superb writers. They really are. Yeah. I took your recommendation and just got an Emperor. Thanks so much, and keep up the great work. I have an Emperor too. It says ici l'Empereur. Lovely pen. This one for everyday writing for some would be a bit large, although I'll be honest, it's a surprisingly comfortable pen for such a large pen. Really comfortable, beautiful pen with wonderful, wonderful nib, massive nib. Yeah, very, very nice. Delta Alpha Romeo, that's an interesting model. Yeah. Nice. You once mentioned that you have a soft spot for Leonardo. Are there any other brands that you have endeared themselves? That have endeared themselves to you, and what is it that made them earn your goodwill? I used to be a big fan of Visconti because I felt that Visconti did very original things with their pen models, with the shapes, with the finishes. And at some point that cooled down a little bit. And the reason that cooled down a little bit was that I had massive issues with their nibs, to the point where some pens hardly even wrote. I have also had some quality control issues. Many Visconti pens I owned have had to have work done on them because parts came off or that kind of stuff. And currently, I find that Visconti is really capitalizing on making another finish of this pen, and another finish, and another finish, and another finish, and another finish of this pen, and another finish. So I don't find that to display the greatest level of creativity. The Homo sapiens is a very nice model, but do we need 500 different finishes of that model, or would it be fun to do a completely different model for a change? I'm not trying to criticize. I'm just saying, because your question was, what endeared those models, those brands to you? Well, it was their original design. Take something like this. This is the most gimmicky pen I own, but I love it dearly. The Visconti Speakeasy. Speakeasy. It's fun. It has a hidden alcohol compartment in the back. Now, I happen to not drink, but I think it's gimmicky. It's kind of funny. It's a conversation piece. It's also a massive pen, by the way. And it has, you can't see that. I forgot to take out my loop, but there is a pick your poison wheel here. You may be able to see that window. Right now, it says rum. And if I twist this ring, now it says vodka. And if I twist it again, then it says grappa. So, I mean, you can pick the alcohol that you put in here, and people can hardly see it because it's kind of at the side, so they wouldn't be able to see it. And if you don't want to use that, it also has a Visconti logo, which you can just put in that window. So a lot of attention, time, and detail went into this pen, and that I think is really, really nice. But I don't see them doing this stuff anymore. It's all Homo sapiens now, and breezes and that kind of stuff, which, again, I'm not criticizing, right? I also understand they have to make money, and that is an effective way to do that. You take what you already have and you change it up. And I think for collectors of the Homo sapiens, that's fantastic. They have a little thing to look for every time. So again, it's not a criticism. It's just that that's not really my brand anymore. Are there any other brands? I like Conid for their reliable pens. I think that's a very nice Very nice brand, pens that are put together very, very well. But they do have very long waiting times, and those are not cheap pens. So you also pay heavily for that put together well part. I like Danny Trio, but that's another very exclusive. Those are very expensive pens, but I do really like them. I have two here. These are both Urushi models. They're very nice. Also quite, well, actually very large, especially this one. The Genkai and the Mikado, very, very lovely, wonderful pens. So I don't know if there's any one brand that I particularly that really is like sort of like a make or break brand for me, that I, whenever they put out something, I have to have it. There's a very long answer to that question, but I hope that made sense. All right. What else do we have? Oh, I was not far off, huh? Örebro, Penny Bridge. That's neat. Fascinating. We need more philosophy sessions and book recommendations. List top 5 philosophers or philosophical works that change your perspective on life. Well, I have focused mainly on Stoicism, right? So that's a pretty one-sided way to look at things. But that doesn't mean I don't occasionally also read something else. But for real philosophy, the original Stoics are very interesting to read. So there is, of course, Epictetus with the Enchiridion and the Discourses, very interesting. Marcus Aurelius with the Meditations. Seneca, who wrote a lot, right? Seneca wrote a lot, but his moral letters are very interesting because he tries to explain philosophy to a younger person. There is a book that has collected the lectures and sayings that are left from Musonius Rufus, who's interesting because he was a member of the Roman Equestrian Order, so basically a Roman knight, more or less, and he was a philosophy teacher, and he actually taught Epictetus, and then Epictetus, in turn, his books were given to Marcus Aurelius, and Marcus. So it's kind of like not one connection, but it's kind of interesting. Musonius Rufus. One book that I really liked. I'm sorry, I just have to quickly Google this because I have two books. There's The Art of Happiness and The Art of Living, I think. Stoicism and the Art of Happiness. It's a yellowish book. It's in the Teach Yourself guide. Don Robertson is very interesting. He's a Scottish author, but he's a psychotherapist. So he's a clinical psychologist, and he has a thing for Stoicism. He wrote a couple of interesting books. Also, the I forget the title, but it's about the philosophical foundation of cognitive therapy, which is very interesting. I found it very interesting. And that the book I just mentioned, like Stoicism and the whatever I just said, The Art of Happiness, something, living well, whatever. That's a very interesting book because it's very clear, it's very concise, and he really gives you very practical ways to apply that philosophy to your everyday life. I was just about to reread that because I found it very, very interesting the first time. All right, what else do we have? Namaste from Mumbai. Hi, yes. Namaste back. Hello, Sima. Any custom pen makers you can recommend? Yes, there is. He was just mentioned, so I think of him, Ryan Cruzak, who does not necessarily make super customized pens, but he does very nice pens made out of wood. But he can customize things, if I remember correctly. I recently reviewed because someone lent me a pen from Atelier Lusso, and I was quite impressed by that. I think that was very nicely made and a very comfortable pen to use. So that's a very good one as well. I don't personally own a lot of pens from custom pen makers. In fact, I think I may not own a single pen from a custom pen maker, but these are some people to get you started, I would say. Jaipur, hello. San Francisco. Oh, I've over-scrolled again. It's not as easy as it seems. Foggy San Francisco, yes. Favorite filmmakers? Well, some of the more fascinating movies I have watched were Akira Kurosawa movies. The Seven Samurai, in my mind, is a masterpiece. Yojimbo was very entertaining as well, but it's not just his samurai movies. He also has really interesting takes on life. Ikiru is very good, very sad, but very good. High and Low was very interesting, like sort of like a societal drama, rich versus poor, etc. Very interesting, Kurosawa. Some of his movies, I honestly, was some of the most boring things I've ever seen. But if that's just me, some of the others were fantastic, start to finish. Hidden Fortress, R2-D2 and C-3PO were based on the Hidden Fortress. Very interesting. Yeah. How come modern flex nibs don't even come near the vintage ones? We don't know. Nobody knows. I have read so much speculation that at this point my standard answer is nobody knows. Some people say it's because the nibs used to be forged and now they're stamped, and some people say it's the alloy, and some people say it's the shape, but I mean, surely we must be able to deduce, like, just look at the alloy of the old nibs and reproduce that. Surely we must be able to reproduce that geometry. Surely, I don't know. I'm sorry. That's not meant that's not meant to sound harsh, but this is a question I cannot answer, because every single time people come up with different explanations, and every single time I mention those explanations, people refute all those explanations not being the correct explanation. So I'm not going there anymore. I don't know. Nobody knows. What do you mean nobody knows? Nobody knows. All right. Gourmet Pens is here. Crickets. But yeah, hello. Hello. Okay, what else do we have? As someone who likes a girthy pen and a nice broad nib, do you have a favorite Franklin Christoph model and nib combination to recommend? I have an O2 with a steel broad sig nib currently. Would we call those very girthy? I don't know if Franklin Christophs are the most girthy pens that come to my mind straight away. But yes, I do agree that the Model O2 is a very nice model. I found that very comfortable as well. How about the, have you considered the Model 66, their desk pen? It's not actually, like, you can use it as a normal pen, but it's quite long. There's also a pocket desk pen if you don't want that length, but you like the shape. That one is also a bit girthier, I suppose. And those, yeah, I'll be entirely honest. If I am to have a Franklin Christoph pen, then I would be very tempted to get a Mike Matsuyama tuned nib, simply because he does such excellent work with nibs. But yeah, beyond that, and for me, always I like a broad nib, etc. So the broad sig nib, that sounds like a pretty sweet option. Yeah. What else do we have? What are your thoughts on Canilea pens? I think they're very attractive. I also think they're quite expensive for what they are. If you look at what those kinds of pens would cost from pretty much any other brand, it's an acrylic pen without any like outstanding features. It's just pretty acrylics. And sometimes you can pay for something that's very pretty, and that means that people will pay more for it, but it is just an acrylic pen. So they are attractive. I don't own one, nor will I likely ever own one, but that's just for me. All right. Interesting. More fountain pen hacks. If you want better shading, lift up the nib from the paper more often. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I've not tried it, but I will try it. Thank you. What do we have? What do we have? I like Pilot Metropolitan pen, Schaefer VFM. I have this pen and I feel, yeah, those are nice pens. Yeah, they're very reliable. I have a Pilot Metropolitan here. It is a very reliable writer. What else do we have? I'm just skipping here because everybody's talking to Gourmet Pen, so I'll just shut up now and just, I just have to scroll through these things. Have you read The Art of War? Yes, I have read The Art of War. It's a very fascinating book. That really is, I would say, almost more about the psychology of everything than about anything else, really, right? Which is quite fascinating, and I really enjoy that. It's a very, very interesting book, and one that you can really take a lot of lessons from that you can apply in life. Not in a sort of like an aggressive fashion, but just to understand certain aspects of life. This sounds really vague, so I'll make that concrete. Once upon a time, I was a first-year student, and I had a mentor, and you would, like all students, have a mentor, and we would have conversations with their mentor once a semester. And I don't like being late, so I tend to arrive early. So I was in that building early, but it was an older building and didn't have an elevator. And because I was early, he said, "Do you mind awfully if I just go out and have a quick smoke? This is Amsterdam." So I said, "No, go ahead, sure." Now, Sun Tzu in The Art of War says, if you want to win, you have to be the first in the battlefield. You arrive last, you're already tired, it won't work so well. And I know that day I experienced that because I said, "No, go ahead." So he came back, he just smoked. He ran up the stairs. He sat down, he was completely out of breath. But the thing was, he was the mentor and I was the student, right? So he was kind of catching his breath and like, so how are things going with you? That who won that day, you think? Okay. What else? The Stoics were accompanied by the Cynics and Epicureans in the shell-shocked Athens that came out of Peloponnesian Wars. Have you ever had forays into them? Yes. The Cynics actually very important because Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, was initially trained by a Cynic, so there was definitely Cynic influence in the Stoic philosophy, especially the early Stoic philosophy. The Epicureans were kind of the mortal enemies of the Stoics because they pretty much believe the opposite of Stoics, so that's always interesting. But then, of course, there is Seneca, who also quotes Epicurus a lot in his letters to Lucilius, and that's kind of fascinating too, because that makes a lot of people criticize him because they're, well, you're not really a Stoic, because that's like the enemy, man. So it's very interesting. There's this eclectic way of doing things. Yeah. What is your opinion of the Lamy Studio? People don't talk about it much. They talk about the 2000 or the Safari. Well, it's because it's right in between, I guess. It's not a piston filler. It's a nice pen, the Studio. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not really, the Lamy designs are not really my designs that I really enjoy in a pen, but it's a good pen. It's a nice writer, and they have some really nice finishes. I really like that piano black. May or may not have one for sale right now, but in any case, email me. But it's a nice pen. Yeah, absolutely. Are there still department stores and bookshops with considerable stationery departments in the Netherlands? There are, but I would say increasingly more rarely so. If you know, you know, but the Bijenkorf is still there, and they had larger stationery departments, but even those became a bit smaller. There are, of course, specialized fountain pen stores. Many, Akkerman in The Hague, Akkerman in Amsterdam, La Couronne du Comte, Appelboom, Fontoplumo. There's one in Arnhem, Groningen. But that's specialized shops. Bookstores, you see it. I remember in Leiden, where we lived, there was one bookstore that was a nice, larger bookstore, independent bookstore, and they had some fountain pens, but it was not a massive selection. It was mainly some Waterman, some Lamy, some that kind of stuff. But it was fountain pens. What do you think of pressurized ballpoint pens? I normally don't care for ballpoint pens, but I recently got a Diplomat Space Tech, and it's quite good. Yeah, those are nice. They're nice refills. I hardly ever use them, but I have in the past, and yeah, they're nice. Any pen that is exclusive to you, off limits to all, including your partner? No, I don't think so. I used to own a number of pens that is either borrowed, but I think that's the part of the fun of being together, isn't it? If you had to choose one ink for a work environment, what would it be, and would it be waterproof, archival type? No, I hardly ever use waterproof archival type inks because none of the notes that I take at work are so important that they need to be saved for posterity. Like, it's just not, I just don't have that. So I use any ink, but I have found that SBREBROWN is an excellent ink. And in fact, a lot of people, this is serious, a lot of people at work have told me, oh, that's a really pretty color. And I'm like, yeah. What do you think? OG. Anyway, so there is that. What else do we have? Hello. Oh, I overscrolled again. You see, it slowly scrolls, and then it stops, and then it suddenly like 20 comments ahead. All right, Rob, see what you got. Truffle oil in a cheese and scallion omelette. Feel free to agree or disagree. Please discuss as I enjoy one. Listen to pen chats and do some morning journaling. Morning, Stephen. Morning, Rob. Did you know that truffle oil never actually contains truffle, but that it's a chemical product? I recently learned that. Now, having said that, I like truffle oil. I like it because who doesn't like truffle? I mean, it's truffle. But truffle oil never has truffle. Unless perhaps you go to Italy or something and you purchase a really fancy oil. But the oils you buy here in the supermarket or even in fancy places, really check the ingredients. Almost never truffle. Now, having said that, enough bitching. Yeah, I do like it. And I was actually thinking the other day I should get some truffle oil because whether it's chemical or not, it does add something. And yes, I agree. In an omelet or scrambled eggs, or it does do something. Or sometimes I make scrambled eggs and I put it on bread and I just toast the bread with a bit of the truffle oil sprinkled on it. That's also delicious. I don't care if it's chemical, I'll eat it. You must definitely try Chrysippus, Cleanthes, Zeno, Obsidium, and Massimo Pigliucci if you're into Stoicism. Yes, but Chrysippus, Cleanthes, and Zeno, so that's a reverse order. So the Zeno was the founder, right? And then Cleanthes and then Chrysippus took over. Chrysippus wrote a lot. The problem is that all their work is destroyed. There are some fragments. For example, Diogenes Laertius, like, he writes about all this stuff, and it's very interesting from sort of back in the day. But it's a shame that their material has been destroyed. As to Massimo Pigliucci, yes, that's a great author and a very interesting speaker too. He has very interesting videos on YouTube as well. Sorry. What is your GOAT fountain pen? Yeah, the greatest of all time. Well, we just talked about the Visconti Opera Master. That one is definitely very applicable to everyday life and a pleasant pen to use. So that, I would say, is very nice. I really like it. I really love it. Having said that, oh, I need more tea. I'm sorry. I'm not bored. I just haven't had enough caffeine yet. There'll be a day when I just do this with like a drip and just get it in. There are many. Visconti Opera Master. I also love the LB5. It is a cross-point nib that I have on it, so it's not necessarily the greatest writer for everyday writing because it's such a big nib. But don't tell Aziza that because then she will steal and I'll never see it again. There is the Namiki Emperor, beautiful pen. Yes, it's very large, but it's very, very comfortable. Oh, did I talk to you about my most recent pen? Did I tell you about that? I have found in these scenarios that you appear to like anecdotes. So let me tell you an anecdote. In 2017, I was at the DC Pen Super Show. And I was at Andy Lambrew's table of classic pens / now Lambrew pens. And he had a new pen out, the LB6, and it was beautiful. Now, just in case you're not familiar, right? So I started off my classic pens journey with an LB5, which was a gift from Aziza, a beautiful pen. Later, I bought an LM1, also a beautiful pen. Both bought from Sarge Minhas. Sarge Minhas was an asshole, really, because he has the best pens in the world, and he just makes you spend money. I'm just kidding. I really love Sarge. And his wife Jazz is fantastic too. Anyway, so I have these. I reviewed them. I reviewed this and I reviewed the other one, and I really like it because this red is stellar. There's no arguing. This red is stellar. Okay, so 2017, DC. Andy has the LB6, but these are very expensive pens. They're handmade by Paul Rossi, who's a jeweler. Very, very expensive. He said, I will go back home. I will send you one. You can lend it. You can review it. I say, okay. LB6 Virtue. The series is called the Virtues, and that was the brown one was called the Essence. And I review it. And I commented on it, and I found the section a bit girthy because that's a big pen. I was also kind of convincing myself that I really didn't want to purchase one because it's very expensive. Fast forward, 2018, summer. I get an email from Andy Lambrew. The LB6 had returned a long time before that. And we were living in Oshawa, which is 60 kilometers to the east of Toronto. He said, I'm going to be in Toronto. Would you like to meet up? I have something to show you. I say, okay. Sounds cool, because Andy Lambrew has cool stuff. I said, why don't we meet up at Pens and Pines? That's the local pen club. They happen to meet on Friday. Why don't you come into the city on Friday? We'll be there. There'll be other people who would love to see what you have. He says, okay. Andy Lambrew shows up. It's in a bar. Aziza and I are sitting there. We're there a bit early. We went a bit early so we could have some time with Andy. Now, Andy is a cute little guy. He comes up to here. He's a cute little guy. And he has with him a wooden briefcase. And he opens it up. He sits down next to me, opens it up, and it's filled with prototypes, artist proofs. I don't even want to think about the value of pens that was in that suitcase. A little briefcase, right? That was a lot. And I honestly think that I would not be remiss for saying that you could probably buy a very, very high-end luxury car with the value of that little briefcase. Anyway, we're talking, and at some point Aziza nudges me in the side and says, ask him about an LB6. And I say, yeah, but they're very expensive. She said, yeah, but I know you really want an LB6. Just ask him. I said, okay. Now, I bring to your attention, right? My LB5, my LM1. I say, Andy, I was just wondering, do you have any LB6s left? Because these are very limited. They're limited to 10 per color. And there's a red, there's a white, there's a green. You can look up the colors. And there's silence. At this point, he sits across from the table, across from me at the table, and he has this sort of demonic smile on his face. And he says, what's your favorite color? I think, oh, shit. I said, well, Andy, you know, it's red. And he says, I have one left in red. And it's number 6. LB6, number 6. I say, well, yeah, but, you know, they're very expensive. I don't, like, I'm very interested, but, and he says, rummages through his little briefcase. And then he takes the calculator, slides it across the table, and there's a number on it. I said, that's interesting. Now, I'm not going to give you the actual discount for the simple reason that he said, this is a special discount. I sold a lot of pens when you did your reviews. People love the reviews. That was very clearly of interest to people, and it helped me out. So I will give you this special discount. It was an offer I couldn't refuse, and I felt like I was in The Godfather 2. Anyway, 2 years later, here's an LB6. It is beautiful. It is faceted. It is the same diffusion bonded acrylic, which is supposed to be a bulletproof material. It is indeed a girthy section, but I don't know if my tastes have changed or if I've used enough, the Emperor enough that I'm now trained. It's very, very nice. This is not the nib that goes on it. Nib is off. Nib is currently making its way to LA, Mike Masayama, because I want to have some work done on that. It's a whole different discussion we had, but that led to me recording a video called on nib mices. But we'll talk about that another time. Deum in adiutorium meum intende. La 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 la. It's beautiful. It's absolutely stellar, and it's a massive pen too. You thought the LB5 was big. LB6 is huge, massive diameter. Well, that took up enough time, didn't it? Was that like 10 minutes or something? Anyway, so if we're talking about goat pens, the LB6 is now quite high up on that list. What is your favorite blue-black? I think we have had a similar discussion last week. My personal favorite is Waterman Blue-Black. This is a good book recommendation, The Inner Citadel by B.R.E. Yes, it is. I read that. Very, very nice. Yeah. In your opinion, what will the fountain pen industry be like if we eliminate impulsive buyers and pen collectors who purchase only to add every new color variant to their closet? Yeah, I think it would be... I think there are different kinds of people in the fountain pen hobby. I always think that sounds a bit weird, the fountain pen hobby, but there are people who just collect and they buy a pen, they never open the box, they keep it sealed, and then 10 years later they sell it at a profit. Or they just keep it because they know they have it in their collection, but they will never use it. I'm not that person. I really like to use my pens. I really do. So for me, that doesn't make much sense, but to each his own, right? There are users who just want to have pens, and I have very little in ways of a focus in my collection, although red diffusion bonded acrylic is clearly becoming some sort of focus. Anyway, interesting. What concerns me is how expensive pens are becoming and how that is just not a very... I don't think that's a very good development, because I think it kind of scares off people. And I would want pens to be a bit more affordable, because it used to be $500 and it became $1,000. Now it's $2,000 or more. And I think that's a bit excessive. Just saying. Do you use the gold nib pilot pens? I don't have any pilot pens. For no particular reason, it's not really my design of pen. I know I've said that a couple of times today, but this is like, I'm very special, but like there's certain designs that I really like. Something original I really like, but that the pilots don't typically work for. Now, having said that, I have used the pilot gold nibs, and they're very nice writers. Yeah. Can you suggest any European independent fountain pen makers? Well, clearly nothing immediately comes to mind. There are people, but for example, there's I blank on his name right now, but there is Manu Propria in Switzerland who does very interesting urushi work. Oh, and of course, I guess it's European. There is well, no, actually, it's not a pen maker. I was gonna say there is Tamanuri Studios, but Studio. studio, I think. But he does urushi lacquer on existing pens, so I don't know if that qualifies as an independent pen maker. And Minor Propria is also very expensive because those are handmade pens with urushi. They're very costly. Thoughts on Lucrin pen pouches? No, because I have never used one. Sorry. Have you thought of doing a book club? I had not thought of doing a book club, but that'd be an interesting idea. I have to give that some thought. Have you experienced that ink in Fude nib pens dries faster than other nibs? Maybe it's the added surface of the nib. That's possible. You do have that surface, and maybe but you would also expect that with a cap, though, that wouldn't. I'm going to try that. I just had a Fude nib here. Someone sent me very kindly. It's not the world's biggest Fude nib. Some are more pronounced, but I'll try it. I'll ink it up and I'll see if it dries out quickly, because this has a solid capping action. I'll try it. I'll come back to that. Hello from New York City. Hello. I purchased a Yardelette Grand Viceroy Victorian. Nice. What pen pouch would you recommend? Yeah, I always have, when it comes to me and carrying pens, there's really only one that I use. And that's this one, made by Van der Spek, which also fits Yardelette. It's a Dutch company, Van der Spek, and they make 4 pen cases, but also 3 and I think 2 and 1, and they make pretty much everything. They even make custom stuff. This is a custom one I had them make for me. So that's my go-to. Yardelette used to make their own single pen sleeves, which were very nice with flaps and were very nice, but I think they stopped doing that. Same thing with their ink. They discontinued their ink, which I'm pretty sure was diamine ink given the bottles. But those were very nice. Yardelette Claret was a beautiful ink. I'm really sad they discontinued that. Which pen do you like better, Conklin All-American or Durograph? I'm not a massive fan of the modern Conklin pens, because I've had a lot of issues with them writing and being incredibly dry. But I don't know which one to pick in that regard. Wasn't the All-American, didn't they do that orange one? Because that one I really liked. That was a very pretty finish, I thought. Can you do a new video on pen pouches you use? I guess, but it hasn't really changed. So the old video is current. Like that's what I use really. Oh, this is interesting. What did Roger do for quit in his former life? I don't think that backstory has been fleshed out yet. See what I did there? I have to think about that one. I'll ask him. Yeah, that's the solution, isn't it? Make your own truffle oil by grating truffles in oil. Yes, probably have to do that. If you had no choice but to keep 3 pens apart from your granddad's, what would these be? Well, I'd probably go for the Namiki Emperor, the Visconti Opera Master, and the LB5. Yeah. LB6 excitement notwithstanding. LB5 is a special pen. As Franklin Christoph set the precedent for what a relatively smaller maker should do to make their nibs distinct. Well, I guess so, because of course they had Jim Rouse, who was a really nice guy, who was their kind of resident nibmeister, who came up with the Sig nib, and they also had the Mike Masayama tuning. I think, sorry, I think before them, Edison pens had I want to say they had their binderized, like the Binder Flex nibs. I think they did that before Franklin Christoph, but I could be wrong. But yeah, I think it's a very good idea. I think what I really like about the Mike Masayama tuning stuff is that Mike Masayama does a fantastic job tuning nibs. And if you do that, you spend some more money, but you also get grinds from him. So you know it's pretty much guaranteed that you're going to get a nib that's going to write superbly. So I think, yeah, that is an interesting thing you can do to set yourself apart as a company and to offer that tune-up, and you will pay. But if you were to send your nib to Mike Masayama, you pay for it as well. LB6 was an expensive pen, but I wasn't happy with the nib, so I sent it to Mike Masayama, and I know that he will take care of it, and that's the thing. So again, there's a video on that topic coming up quite soon. Is that worth it? Yeah, to me it is worth it, because that means that pen is going to write flawlessly. And that's worth the extra bucks that I sent his way to pay for his services. Yeah, exactly. We were talking about the pressurized ballpoints earlier. There is, of course, the Fisher Space Pen. Yeah, exactly. I have used someone else's once. I've never owned one, but I tried someone else's. It's a very nice little pen. T is only T if it can be extracted at least twice. Yes, this is a second flush Assam, which I do the very thing you just described with. That is very good. I forgot the name. Rambang? I want to say it's the plantation. I could be wrong. Very good. Bonjour. How did you lose weight? Any tips? Yes. I started to... I had my granddad had many great sayings, and one of his was, but this is Dutch. I just have to translate this. He would call that the OEH diet, only eat half. And that works really well, you know, but it wasn't just that. It was also exercise. Moving to Canada, there was we lived with my parents-in-law for a while, and they had a device. I am really blanking. Sometimes it's really difficult because I have the Dutch word in mind now, and I cannot. Treadmill. There we go. They had a treadmill in the basement, and I just started to use that. Now, I hate running, but I would walk at a high speed at the steepest incline, and I do that for an hour every morning, basically burning off 1,000 calories a morning. And I was very mindful of what I ate. And then I lost over 20 pounds. It's possible. I never went on a diet. I never only ate salad, but I exercised. And it's not that I didn't exercise in the Netherlands. We walked a lot in the Netherlands because we didn't have a car. But still, so that, yeah. And I really make an effort to get 10,000 steps in every day. Right now, with pandemic and all that, I'm aiming for 20,000, which also works. And that works too. But you just be more careful. And I do eat all kinds of things now. Like all kinds of things. And so far, so good. So that's the suggestion. I don't think there are magic solutions, but it is that. There is the exercise and there is the mindful of what you eat. Could you make a fountain pen ink with a truffle oil base? Well, I suppose that you could add those chemicals they put in the oil to have the smell in it. Well, here we go, Robert. Ingredients: olive oil, flavor, and Italian dried black truffle. Well, there you go. Well, then that's an actual truffle oil, and then there is no problem. But it also sounds like it's a proper truffle oil, and not just like I went to Superstore and I bought truffle oil. What was the largest number of fountain pens you had at any one time? Curious, I've just rewatched some of your older videos. At some point I stopped counting, but I know that when Aziz and I got together, I had about 300. And now I have about a tenth of that. Do you have a maximum number of pens you will have in a collection? No, not really, but they do have to be special. So I'm not really like, well, now I have an LB6, so now one has to go. But I do regularly look over what I have and then sell what I don't want. Because sometimes I have a pen that I just don't use. And then, for example, Yardled Viceroy Grand I use a lot, but the Yardled Viceroy Standard and Pocket, I can't show them all clearly, but I barely ever use. So if you're interested in one of these two, you want to purchase one, send me an email. We will have some words. I'm from India. Where can I buy classic LB pens from? Well, the last LB5 I saw was on eBay for 5,800 US. That was a prototype. That was very expensive. The LB5s don't show up much because people haven't tend to keep them. But classicpensinc.com, Classic Pens Inc. So INC. Make sure classicpensinc.com. They sell them. What they have left anyway, but they're all very limited editions, so there aren't many left, I think. What else do we have? I'd like to get a Faber-Castell fountain pen, as I heard good things about their broad nibs. Can you recommend a good one for under 100 to 150? I think the Emotion used to be one of my favorites, but to be honest, they're all good. It really doesn't matter. Even their $20 ones, the basic, well, it's not exactly $20, but you know what I mean? Like they're very low-end ones, like the basic, the Loom. I shouldn't say that. They're starter models, right? The basic, the Loom, they all have similar nibs of great quality. I really, really enjoyed that. Who do you rate as the world's #1 nibmeister? It depends on who you ask. You're asking me. I've used the work of a number of nibmeisters. Mike Masayama a lot. Well, a lot. When I say a lot, I shouldn't say a lot. I currently have 2 pens with nibs that he worked on, but I had some others in the past. It never disappointed me. Always been very consistent, fantastic work, and that I really, really like. So I'm always been very pleased with him. Dan Smith, the Nib Smith, does really good work. Mark Bacchus, the Nib Grinder, does good work. There are so many, but for me, it's Mike Masayama simply because, like, once you have that, like, you have that experience, you think, well, this is so good. Why would I send to anyone else? Like, I already have that. Baffles me why you need 3 prohibitively expensive pens in the same swirly red plastic. Why not invest in something else? Well, it's my choice, isn't it? So it's not like it's kind of simple. I really like this swirly red plastic. If you don't, that's your right, and then you don't have to buy them, right? What is the best A5 notebook for fountain pens? I don't know. I like Leuchtturm. The Leuchtturm 1917. That I've found a good quality, and they have some features that I like. They have numbered pages, for example, which I think is quite nice. You can also shop around a bit and look at other. There are brands that offer Tomoe River, and although I wasn't initially a huge fan of Tomoe River, I do have to admit that it is in fact very nice paper. So you can find Tomoe River bound notebooks from different makers that are very nice. If you're looking for a very special notebook that really is very nicely bound, has a very nice cover, and you have many options, there is a very good bookbinder called Anna Gatz, Gatz, Anna Gatz. She has a brand called Gatz, so again, GATZBCN. She makes notebooks with Tomoe River. She puts in very nicely bound hard covers, look really beautiful, and I think are really fairly priced for their very, very high quality. She's in Spain, but she does superb work. So I really like that. including A5. I picked up some watchmaker drawers, similar way at my local vendor's mall. Got a nice little discount. Yeah, it makes a difference, doesn't it? Oh, Ellen points out this very good, yes, very good point. I have an Amiki, therefore I have a pilot. This is correct. Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. Yes. I do have a pilot. Yeah, wow. And it's gold nib, and I like it. This answers all the questions. Thank you so much. What else do we have? Yes, I was about to mention. So we were asking about pen makers in the UK. I was asked about that just earlier, and a great independent pen maker, says Beata, is John Twist, and I wanted to mention John Twist, but I suddenly wasn't sure whether or not he was in the UK or not. That's why I didn't mention him. But I have seen his pens, and it is indeed very nice work that he does. So thank you for, without me prompting you, for pointing that out. I probably at some point should check out his work more. Yeah. Is using a fountain pen utilizing a lot of brain power? Can we make it use more in a different language? Well, that's a really interesting question. A lot of brain power, I don't know. But when you think about it, there is a lot involved in writing. There is the actual thinking about what you want to write, right? Or in this case, what I wanted to say. And then sometimes you need to take a break, as I just did, to finish up your sentence, your thought. Then you have to convey that to motor output, to the page, to actually move the pen and do all those kinds of things. And that does take some brain power. I wouldn't necessarily say it is an incredible, like massive feat. I can come up with some other things that would be more involved. For example, let's say driving your car through a city you're not familiar with at night while it's dark and it's busy on the street and it's raining and you have the radio on and you're talking to a fellow passenger. I think that's a higher cognitive load. But yeah, and if you were to write in a different language, then yeah, I suppose that it becomes a more challenging task, especially if you're not yet very familiar with that language, right? Because that places a higher cognitive demand on you. Do you think that the pH level of any ink determines its safety? Yes. Any love for pencils? Not really, but simply because I don't find myself using a whole lot of pencils. I just don't. If anything, I sometimes use a rollerball or very occasionally a ballpoint, but I'm not really a pencil user. Both actual wooden pencils and mechanical pencils, I don't really, no, not really. So there is that. What else do we have? The most expensive pen with which I have ever written. I have to think for a second. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think I did at some point. Applebaum. It was interesting. Aziz and I were in the shop, and Yo said, "Oh, do you want to borrow a pen of the year from Graf von Faber-Castell just to review?" And I was like, I guess. Aren't those super expensive? So we went home with that pen, and of course, had it back to him in no time because I was very nervous having that around. But those were very expensive because those are like 3,000 euros or something. They are very expensive pens. That may have been the most expensive one. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, I think it was that probably. Type of paper that you like? Well, I kind of mentioned that just now, but so the Tomoe River I think is very nice. That may be one of my favorites, the Tomoe River. Yes. What else do we have? Yes, there are 4 finishes to the Ardled fountain pens. There's the body, the Victorian, the plain finish, and the lined. That's an exclusive one. Tempted to add another, not particularly. For this one, I like the Victorian, and I just like the Victorian. The other ones are all pretty too, but in that regard, no. There, I don't have the need to have any other ones. What else do we have? Favorite music, artists or bands? Well, there is a band that I really like, and they've had an amazing evolution in my mind. And they're from Poland. They're called Kroke, Kroke. And they started off as sort of like a klezmer world music, which is a very interesting combination, and they have now evolved into something that I can't even describe. Some of it is a little bit, almost like a little bit of a jazz-like influence, but there is a lot of world music. There's still some klezmer. There's unique. It's just unique. Yeah. Very, very interesting. Why do you think Montblanc doesn't include technologies like platinum slip and seal, which prevents fountain pens from drying up from year without use if capped? I don't know. That would be one for Montblanc, I guess. I sometimes wonder what Montblanc's purpose is with the pens they make, right? I think it's a brand that has really branded itself very, very, very strongly. And they go for pens that are very exclusive in their minds and that are collector's pieces. What I'm trying to say is I don't know how much the fact that they actually write matters to Montblanc. It used to a lot. They had nibmeisters who would tune the nibs and who would test all the nibs. But I sometimes get the feeling that it is more about the collector's appeal of those pens and than that it's really about the writing. Whereas if you look at a brand like what you mentioned, like say Platinum, those are real writing pens. They're really made to be written with, and maybe less collectible or maybe less super expensive, etc. But they are made for people who really write with the pens. So I think that's an important distinction. And I don't know if that really factors into play, but that's how I would look at that type of question. I think the Pilot Justice 95 is an interesting pen with that unique nib. Yeah, it is. And it's not as spectacular as it's sometimes made to seem. It's not a pen that goes from a super rigid nib to a wet noodle nib. It's not that, but you can regulate the springiness, and that's really nice. So they have that as an option. I think it is a neat design. And others have done that kind of stuff before, while Eversharp has done that well in the past. So, I mean, it's not a unique concept to have a nib that you can adjust, but it is very nice, and it's nice that it's available in a modern pen. So I think that's a really neat idea. Yeah. Rob adds to the Nibmeister discussion. He said, Mike's nibs were good, but so precise and often crisp for the italics. I had Jim Rouse take some of the crispness off at a DC show. It happens. Yeah. And then Mike at that time was fixing up a pen purchase from Dan Smith, who's another Nibmeister. So yeah. It's and I also think that this is also a matter of to each one's own, right? Like some Nibmeisters have, let me rephrase that. Some Nibmeisters really resonate well with you, and others may not. And then there's a difference between being with them at a pen show where they can tune your nib and then give it back to you, and you try and it's a back and forth, as opposed to you send them a pen and they work on the nib and they send it back and it's not what you wanted, and it's much harder to do that back and forth, right? And I think different people have different preferences. So yeah, I again, all those Nibmeisters I've mentioned that I've interacted with, or whose nib work I've experienced, have all been very good, but they all have slightly different approaches to things. And what might be a crisp italic to one may be somewhat more stub-like to another, right? Where did you buy the tea-aged and poured barrels? That was from World Tea House in Halifax. They ship within Canada. I don't see why they wouldn't, because if I remember correctly, you're in the UK. I wouldn't see why they wouldn't ship to the UK. I thought they did worldwide shipping. But it's not a big chain or anything, so it is. But I think he does worldwide shipping. He's a very nice guy, too. All right. What's your favorite entry-level 14K Japanese broad nib? Well, I really like Sailor nibs. So I don't know if that's an entry level necessarily, but I do really like Sailor. And their broad nibs are good. There is the Platinum Course. That's a very broad nib. So you have to really, really like a really broad nib. And then it's a great nib too. So I don't know if one is necessarily better than the other. I just have I like with sailing with a nib myself. I just have a small preference for Sailor over Platinum and Pilot because of their nibs. But again, that's just me. That's just me. Question you are uniquely placed to answer. This makes me nervous. I haven't read it yet, but it makes me nervous. Does everyone experience color in the same way? I ask, as some in fountain pen community, myself included, really fuss over inks others don't seem to care much for. Well, I see what you mean. This is a very interesting question because this gets to the intersection of, I would say, cognitive neuroscience and its cognitive psychological part and philosophy. Strictly speaking, there could be variations in your physiology that make you perceive a color somewhat differently from someone else. Sometimes there are severe differences. If you are a protanope, a deuteranope, or a tritanope, then depending on what specific, which of these three you just are, what I just mentioned, you lack one of the three types of cones on your retina that allow you to see color. And those cones are in themselves very complicated, and I would prefer not to get into that right now, but the story they may have told you in like primary school or high school that you have red cones and blue cones, that's not true. Each cone responds to a band of frequencies, wavelengths, we say, of light. The long wavelength cones respond to a whole bunch of different types of light, not just long wavelengths, also medium wavelengths, even some of the shorter wavelengths, just not as powerfully so. What I'm trying to say is, the first issue is that you could have a specific genetic makeup that makes it so that you, for example, do not have short wavelength cones or do not have long wavelength cones. Okay, but then you are basically what we would call colloquially colorblind, but you're not really colorblind. You're actually color deficient. You have trouble registering a certain color simply because you lack the cones that respond best to that color, say blue or say red. But I'm assuming that that's not the case for you. I'm assuming that you have normal vision. That's not a value judgment. That's just what we call that. You're not color deficient, then you have normal vision. Okay. If you have normal vision, then you enter a whole different minefield. Because now, not only could you have all the cones, but who says that you and I have exactly the same number of short, medium, and wavelength cones? We know on average what you have. We know which ones you have most of. Let's say we have a very similar number of cones. But then that information goes from your eye into your brain, and in your brain it's processed in a different manner, right? So that makes no sense. In your brain it's processed further and further in a more and more complicated fashion. That's difficult as well. So assuming, which we don't know, assuming that your brain processes that color exactly the same way as mine, you would expect that to both you and me, this is red. But we can't really know that. There are certain things that we kind of understand about consciousness. And even if we cannot fully solve those problems yet, we can probably solve them at some point once we have that technology. If you find this interesting, look into the soft problem of consciousness. We can probably at some point solve that. But then there is the hard problem of consciousness. And the hard problem of consciousness, which some people, Massimo Pigliucci came out before, he's a philosopher. Massimo Pigliucci says there is no hard problem of consciousness. But assuming that right now we say, no, there is a hard problem of consciousness, what that means is, how do I know that this red looks like the same red to you as it does to me? Well, that we currently do not have a solution for. And we don't know. We cannot measure that. So if I say a strawberry is red and you say a strawberry is red, to both of us, that may look a little different, like a different shade of red. Again, provided we both have normal color vision. Simply because we don't know if what you call red is exactly the same as what I call red. It's probably both red, that sort of wavelength of light being reflected off that object. But how do we know it's the same red? Well, we don't. Whoa. Yeah. Very complicated. Very complicated. So I don't know if this was an answer to your question. Let me rephrase that. That was a very long monologue answer to your question. I would say the shortest answer is, does everyone experience color in the same way? We're not sure, but it may be the case that you don't. Now, provided that you have normal vision, there is no way that you would say this is a green pen. That's not feasible. Then you would have a color deficiency, or this truly is a green pen and I perceive it as red and I have a color deficiency. But if we see it as the exact same shade, that we don't know. And then, of course, there's matters of taste. Like, you just may not like brown ink, so you may not like blue, so whatever, there's that as well. But I don't think that was your question. Your question was really about the perception. Yeah. I teach a course called Sensation and Perception, and this is part of that. And this is something that students struggle with a lot. And that's not strange, because I think everyone in their normal minds would struggle with this, because this is a very difficult concept. Because again, this is where cognitive neuroscience and philosophy intersect. And that becomes a very, very difficult thing. What would be your number one piece of advice to someone starting out on YouTube making fountain pen reviews? Make sure that you can handle criticism, because you will get it. And that remains a lifelong struggle. Some people find it easier, some people find it harder, but it remains a lifelong struggle. The pen community is incredibly pedantic, and there are many people who are very, very opinionated and who are very eager to point out everything you have done wrong, in their eyes at least. Having said that, most people I interact with in the pen community, like we're doing today, are incredibly nice, right? So you will likely find it a very rewarding avenue of pursuit, like something to do. Beyond that, develop your own style. You cannot just copy what someone else does and say, oh, this is my review format as well. And just, that's not, I don't think that works very well. So I would do that. Develop your own style, your own way of doing it. And the final bit of advice is, you have to be patient. I now have 52,000 subscribers. That was 9 years of work, right? So don't think that you will go to 20,000 subscribers overnight. That's not going to happen, especially because this day and age, there are so many fountain pen reviewers. It's no longer, when I started, there was basically Brian Goulet and me, and there was no one else, not systematically anyway. That's expanded a lot, which I think is great. That means that people have all kinds of additional opinions, but breaking through is not that easy anymore. Oh, and the final thing I would say, just because don't expect, I don't know if you do, and I'm not saying that you do, but I just want to point that out. Don't expect that it's going to make you rich, because you can get some money out of it. But right now, 52,000 subscribers plus, every video gets, depending on what it is, but something like 4,000 views. I get about $130 a month from YouTube. So it's not like you're going to buy a house off of your fountain pen reviews. There are people who do that, but they have over 1 million subscribers, and every video gets 500,000, 1 million views, and they talk about makeup or Minecraft, not about fountain pens. The truffle oil is priced like ink, $17 for 55 milliliter. Yeah. Okay, then we're talking about actual truffle oil. So, yeah. I shouldn't have been, I was too absolute earlier. I said no oil actually contains actual truffle oil. That was a false statement, which I shall now gladly withdraw. If you buy proper truffle oil, that's one thing. It's the inexpensive stuff. Anyway, would you sell your ground barley pen? Yes, in fact, I did. How much would you ask for the yard lead? Just an estimate. The yard leads are very expensive, and their prices have gone up tremendously. I think the standard and the, I would have to check it, the standard and the pocket go for about, I think, 1,700 and 1,500 US, which is a lot. If someone were to give me $1,000 a piece, the pens are theirs. Sending sunshine to you. Thank you, Queen Cats. I appreciate it. It is not, well, actually, I was going to say it's not bad today. No, it's somewhat overcast. It's not a beautiful day out. Could Stoicism as a discipline have much to offer as a coping mechanism during the current COVID pandemic? I think so, because one of the important tenets, one of the central tenets is remember what is and what is not within your control, right? And a pandemic is not within your control, but how you respond to that pandemic is within your control. And that alone, I think, can give people a lot of mental comfort. All right. What else do we have? Virtual pens and pints. I won't be able to make it this Friday, but a future Friday I will try. Yeah. It baffles me. Sorry, I had to read it twice. It baffles me. Why it baffled me? Why you bought what you like? I also bought what I like. Ichiro, my apologies, because what I just said was unkind. I was too harsh in my response. So please forgive me and let me rephrase. Yes, that's it. We all buy what we want. And I fully understand that there would be people, I'm not saying you did. I fully understand there would be people who would say, you're out of your damn mind. Because I will be honest, those 3 classic pens, they were not cheap. I fully hear you. All right? So I get it. And that's the answer. We just buy what we like. But I am serious. That was unpleasant to me. So I'm sorry. I sounded way harsher than I wanted to sound because you were very nice. You've left me nothing but kind comments. So that was unpleasant. If that came across as unpleasant, then I do apologize. Okay? Now we know. Plus, let's not forget that you have a thing for Carl Sagan. And so do I. So you know what I mean, that we have to stick together in this world. All right. What else do we have? Oh, we talked about the A5 notebooks. The Rhodia Webby. Yeah, the Rhodia Web notebook. That's an A5. That's a nice paper as well. Yes. This, Robert recommends the Stalogy. Yes, the Stalogy are nice. I know. I don't remember if I actually used one, but I know that Aziza had some, and I think she was quite pleased with them as well. I'm thinking of getting a Penader Full Metal Jacket fountain pen with a 1.5 stub nib. La Grande Bellezza. Yeah, they're nice. They're nice. I may or may not have a Lamy Studio with a 1.5mm stub nib for sale. Just saying. Email me. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Are you into wristwatches? I know that was a typo, and I know it was supposed to say wristwatches. I just like to say wristwatches because it was funny. Let me say this about that. No. And the only reason I'm not is that I desperately do not need another very expensive rabbit hole to fall into. So I have a wristwatch. I have two wristwatches. One is a Movado and one is a Seiko. And it is not one of the super fancy Seikos. Okay, I think I paid, it's I don't even remember what I paid, but I think it was like 300 euros, if that. And it's just quartz. It's not automatic. I understand all the appeal of watches. I get all that. But no. I'm not going there. Simply because I just don't want to get into that as well. You could say all kinds of ridiculous things like, oh, you only need one watch. Yeah, you only need one pen, right? I know that's not how it works, but I just really don't want to get into watches. So the Seiko I love. The Movado is very nice because it has a black face and it has no numbers on the dial. Is that a dial? See, I don't even know. I like that because it is so clean. And if I have to dress up, I really like to wear that. But that's really as far as I go with watches. I just can't do it. I can't do it. And I fully understand the appeal. And I had a grandfather who was massively into, he loved spending time in watch places. And I like looking at watches and I like looking at fancy watches. But then it's weird because then I have little trouble spending a bit of money on a pen. But then when it comes to watch, I think it's like $600 for a watch. And that's nothing, right? That is absolutely nothing when it comes to watches. So yeah, it's just me. Again, this is no judgment, right? Like I know people are very much into watches and I appreciate that, but I can't, yeah, no, not for me. Gijs. How does Mont Blanc ink compare to Pelikan Edelstein ink? Which one is wetter? I would be inclined to say that depends a bit on which ink. I know you asked about Edelstein. Regular Pelikan ink, the, what is it, 4001? 4001, the small bottles, I found quite dry. The turquoise, quite dry. The purple, quite dry. That's really it. The Königsblau is, I don't remember that to be the wettest writer ever. Edelstein inks are much wetter. The Edelstein, I'm sorry, I'm blanking what specific gemstone, but their turquoise is a beautiful ink that's really quite wet. I love the Star Ruby, Edelstein Star Ruby. I really like that. It's not necessarily my typical color, but I really like that. As to the Mont Blanc inks, it will depend a bit on which one you're talking about. I want to say that the lavender purple was a little drier, but I haven't used that for probably years, so I may misremember that. Their Irish green is very wet. Their toffee brown is a bit drier, relatively speaking. I feel like I'm just rambling now, so I'm just going to say the Edelstein inks are very wet. For the Mont Blanc inks, it depends a little bit on which ink you're talking about. And that's it. I have never had issues with Mont Blanc inks. I know someone in a local pen club who has. I have not had those issues. And that's it. I like the Mont Blanc inks. The Corn Poppy, they should not have discontinued. It's stupid. Anyway, Irish green is beautiful, beautiful dark green. Toffee brown is nice, but not as nice as SBREBROWN. You know. But anyway, it's nice. I'm just kidding, of course. It's nice. The royal blue is nice. Yeah, the good inks. But so are the Edelsteins. Edelsteins are just no, yeah, no, they're just yeah. Well, no, I know. I like them both. I like them both. I don't know why I rambled so long about the answer. It's a pretty simple question, but I hope that helps. Richard Binder has a list of pH values for inks. Scares the crap out of me because I have some of those inks. Yeah. If you want my honest opinion, I have never like what do you call that? pH'd an ink. But I have had inks that interacted very negatively to the point of destroying pens, but those were pens with rubber parts on the inside. I have not scientifically tested this, or not scientifically tested this. But I think you have to be a little careful about what type of pen you're talking about. Would I put an ink with a very low pH in a vintage pen with a rubber sack? No. No, I wouldn't. But is a pen with a rubber sack right? If you have a pen with a cartridge converter, yeah, a cartridge converter, that's plastic. The ink touches nothing but plastic. The piston seal is plastic. It's not rubber. The feed is likely plastic. Could be ebonite, but let's say plastic. Does it really matter? I don't really think so. You know? Again, that's just me. But I would look at the pen. Anything with rubber parts, latex parts, pens with sacks, pens with pneumatic fillers, that kind of stuff, I would be very conservative. Cartridge converter, maybe less so. Piston filler of celluloid with no internal sleeve, but just ink to celluloid contact, maybe be a bit careful as well. If you really want to be 100% sure, you should only use washable blue. But then again, what's the enjoyment of using a fountain pen? You know? But yeah, I understand that fear. I found out when you start liking fountain pens, you will start buying more pens and spend more money. Eventually become addicted to them. Is there a psychological way to explain why this has happened? Well, I think it's sorry. I think it's a collecting thing, right? People want to be started to get into a collector mode, and people like collecting. I almost want to say that's an evolutionary thing. We're used to collecting. We want all the food and all the stuff like. And I think there's a lot to explore. Different nib types, different filling systems, maybe different materials. I think that's what it is. That's at least what it was like for me. Oh, now I want to try a piston filler. Now I want to try a plunge filler. Now I want to try a gold nib. Now I want to try italic and bleak and all that stuff. And again, I ended up selling almost everything of them. So I think that's what it is. You just want to sample all these different things. What type of filling systems do you have to be careful with when choosing ink? That I think I just talked about. What pH levels would you say are dangerous for pens? Well, I can't say, I don't have that in mind. Very low, very high, right? Something acidic, something basic, I would be a little careful, but that's it. I don't have like 2 is dangerous and 3 is not, something like I don't have that in mind. I hope that makes sense with what also in line with what I just said. What else do we have? Yeah. You would think that scrolling is not that difficult. There we go. Yeah, I should do what you said. I will try to click and drag. Are you interested in pen making and pen turning? You know, I never gave it any thought. I have to, yeah, I don't know. You require a bit of equipment for that. I've just never given it any thought. I don't consider myself to be a creative person, at least not in that regard of making things like that. I think if I have any creativity, it lies more in making peculiar videos than creating a three-dimensional object out of wood or acrylic or that kind of stuff. I don't know. Now I have to consider that, of course. Not that I have much of a space to put up a lathe here, but shut up. Don't get me into that. Don't get me started. Don't get me started. Again, we don't need more hobbies. Have you seen Yo's presentation of the Mont Blanc Patron of the Art 2020 Moctezuma? Yeah, well, I haven't seen it yet. Did he do something interesting? I do have a Moctezuma on the way to review. I'll check it out. Favorite knife brand? Do you like Victorinox Swiss Army knives? Yes, I do have a Victorinox Swiss Army knife. When it comes to kitchen knives, I really like Kai Shun. I know that is not a super like top of the line Rolls-Royce type knife brand, but it is in my mind good. It serves my purpose very well. I really like their knives. I like the geometry. I like all those things. When it comes to pocket knives, I'm a classic. I don't have anything here at hand, but I'm a classical person. I like classic looking knives with horn scales or antler scales or wooden scales or that kind of stuff. I don't like tactical looking knives with the huge serrated edges and blackened. Like, I don't. That's not really my style. Simply because I do use my knives when I get a package at the office. I like to open it up, but I don't like my colleagues to look at me like it's Rambo. Like, why do you have such a huge tactical looking knife? But if you have a little classic looking knife that looks like something that doesn't have to be that little. I have some larger ones, but it looks like something your granddad gave you, then usually people are like, oh, it's just a pocket knife. Now this is Alberta, so things are a little different here. But yeah. What else do we have? 3 Dutch songs that everyone should know. Well, I've never really been a massive fan of my country's Dutch music, I'll be honest. I have to think about that one. Bij ons in de Jordaan. That was a classic. Have you tried the Leonardo Music Nib? No, I'll stop there. No, I haven't. I have to contact Salvatore. New piston system. Maybe I should be sent one with music nib. But I would find it interesting to check that out. But I don't. I have used the Bock music nib though, and it's a nice nib. It's a nice nib. So. What else do we have? I know it may not be totes your thing, but if you could oversee those crazy Monte Grappa pens, what theme or person would you go for? I'd love to see David Bowie. Well, no, it's not exactly my cup of tea. I do really like that samurai pen I did. There's no way I would ever purchase that. It's something like $15,000 or something. It's yeah, that's very expensive. But I do like that. I would like to see something like that. I also like the I think it's Monte Grappa, right? They did that brain pen, and I am sorely tempted by it. First of all, I think they're sold out everywhere, but they were very expensive. But it was very cool with the neurons on it. I mean, this fit my field well. Hello. Good morning. Morning back. Any experience of double broad Monte Grappa nib? Not double broad. No, broad I would have to check. I don't remember from the top of my head. Got my SBRE ink in this week from Ackerman. It's a good ink. But thank you very much for purchasing it because I appreciate it and I value it. I hope you enjoy it. Color theory-wise, I heard that turquoise is considered green in Germany, whereas it's considered blue here in the US. Maybe a cultural component to talking about color, if not perception. Absolutely. In fact, there are certain cultures, this is published research, where it turns out that, for example, sorry, certain cultures have no different, like separate words for blue and green. They have one word that refers to both. Now, lo and behold, if you do research with people from those cultures and you have them just respond to different colors, like press this button for red and this for yellow, etc., guess what? They actually take longer to respond to blue and green if you ask them to distinguish it, because they're not used to it. They're not used to thinking in different terms of blue and green. They just have one word that refers to both colors. Hard to imagine if you're a native English speaker or someone who's used English, because we have blue and green, but they don't. Which does suggest, you're absolutely right, that there is a cultural component to that, to the perception of color. So yeah, you're right. That is there. So that's what makes it so complicated. There is the sensation part, which is the cones and the stuff in your brain, but then there's the perception part, which is cortical, where you actually interpret things, and becomes very difficult very quickly. Even, that's why this field is even harder, but I find it as one of my favorite fields, but it's very complicated. After operation on one eye, I now see a yellower world out of my right eye than my left eye. Yeah. Well, it depends on what they have done. I don't know which eye, sorry, which eye is the yellower one. As you grow older, the lens becomes a little less clear. Sorry. And that can make things yellower. But I don't know, if it's the operated eye, then I have to think about it more. All right. I read an article that said women evolved to see the variations in color that men don't typically pick up on. Said it was based on women gatherers needing to distinguish ripeness in different berries. Yeah, possible and likely. There are definitely theories that we have, sorry, that we have evolved color vision for that kind of purpose. Like, imagine that you are gathering berries and you cannot distinguish red from green, then you wouldn't see the berries against the foliage. So it would make sense that would be an evolutionary advantage. You can find food more easily, right? So that could indeed be an explanation. This is correct. What else do we have? What else do we have? Do you ever test pedagogic methods on your videos and evaluate them based on replies? Not consciously, but that's an interesting idea, which I'll have to give some thought, because that would be an interesting testing ground. No, Robert, please don't worry. No. I enjoyed the truffle oil stuff. No. No, that was very helpful. Thank you. No, don't worry. Why did you sell the barley? Well, I just like the Victorian better. So there is that. Gourmet Pens comments, SBREBROWN is terrible at recommending notebooks. This is correct. She says she has to take over. This is also correct. She says the author A5 Slim Tomway River. Yeah, do you know I found a couple here? So I have some for you. Gats BCN. Yeah, I did mention her. See, so what are you talking about, woman? Like I mentioned the very person that you mentioned. God. But I love you. There's Nanami Papers, 7, I don't know if Nanami, I don't know. 7 Seas Notebooks. Yes. Midori, Stalogy, Graphilo. Gourmet Pens does not recommend Rhodia Webbies for fountain pens. We stand corrected. I think Gourmet Pen should buy your Jaeger LeCoultre. Yeah. Well, why don't you convince her of that? What else do we have? Which brands do double broads but are not stubby? Yeah, that's difficult, right? Because with such a broad nib, often you end up with something that is a little stubby simply because there's so much tipping. It's hard. Franklin Christoph did a very nice double broad, which I suppose is Yovo, but that was a very nice double broad that I still found was, in my recollection, was quite round. But maybe Gourmet Pens can answer that too, because I'm pretty sure she had that that nib. What else? Yeah, something like that. So that was an option. Yeah, I don't have anything else. No, right now I don't have anything else. There are others, but I don't have anything else. Also, not everyone offers double broad, so it's a little, you have to shop around a bit. Yeah, that's the Logby, which has no, I just can't reach it, but they have A5 Tomoe River, which is very nice. Yeah. Lamy hardcover notebooks. Interesting. I didn't even know they had notebooks. I did once use, I think it was Graaf und Faber-Castell notebook, and I was that. So it's difficult. Sorry, I'm not. I hope I'm gonna make it. The Graaf und Faber-Castell notebook disappointed me. Now there was only one instance, but that feathered and bled through a lot. I was disappointed in that. Okay. $146 platinum or gold. I think that really is a personal matter. I like gold trim. Some people really don't like it. I think the platinum trim looks a little cooler or colder, which some people really love. I like the gold. I don't have Mont Blanc here to show you. So it's really a personal matter. I wouldn't say one is better than the other. Just a matter of personal preference, I think. What else do we have? Yeah. Another time I overscrolled. It shouldn't be this difficult. Okay. You are utterly correct on truffle oil. They all contain synthetic scents. Some have tiny bits of truffle to bump up the price, but that's irrelevant. You cannot preserve truffles in oil. They rot. That's the reason. I felt it would be something like that, but I hadn't looked into that. Thank you for the thing. So you have to be careful if you have actual truffle oil. Use it up. Interesting. Huh. Thank you for the contribution. Hello. Yeah, interesting comments on pH. Ebonite feeds are hardened like rubber. Yes, exactly. Does it react negatively with low pH inks? I don't know because I've never experienced that. The only issue I've had with inks was really with rubber parts, but that's like the soft rubber, the like you have in the sacks that you would have in those pens, or diaphragms, that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I haven't experienced it. Something says Waterman Serenity Blue is safe, but the pH level is 3 something, which is acidic. Indeed, and I've never had issues with Waterman. No circumstance. I've used a lot of Waterman inks. But again, maybe be a little careful what type of pen you put it in, right? Thank you for mentioning Carl Sagan. We could use some of his inspiration and critical thinking during these times. I agree. I couldn't agree more. Can you imagine if Carl Sagan at some point would have become the president of the United States? That would have been an interesting administration, I would say. But alas, he's gone. Do inks have alcohol in them? That would be dangerous for the shellac glue that holds a rubber sack in place. Alcohol, I don't necessarily think so. but interesting. Yeah. What else? Can you compare rhodinium plating versus platinum? Well, yeah, it's a different metal, right? Like a little bit, but I don't know one would be shinier or like, to me they kind of look the same. But again, I haven't made a huge study of that or anything. Would a video on early inks and the early processes alchemy be interesting? Have you already made a video? I have not made a video like that. It would be interesting. Could be interesting. Yeah, this is the good old iron goal, right? There's a cute animated movie called The Secret of Kells, where iron gold ink plays a bit of a role, which is just cute. It's a cute movie. So that's always one to check out. Will you do another Christmas video? I might. There should be another goat video, but could be Christmas. Who knows? Do you miss the Delta brand in the market? Yeah, of course. It's been an interesting brand, and I also miss Omas. I mean, they were nice brands, and it's a shame when those brands disappear. I haven't owned a massive number of Delta pens. I had the Dolce Vita Oversize, which was a very nice pen. But I miss them. They're nice. Do you make use... Oh, sorry. Are you more excited about a new pen or a new ink? I'm not really an ink person. I have a handful of inks that I really like to use, and I don't buy a whole lot of fancy new inks. It's not something that appeals to me. I mean, I like a good ink, right? Because it goes with your pen, but I don't get the feeling that some people seem to get, where they get super excited whenever a new ink is launched. I really don't get that. But I also don't get that about a lot of new pens coming out, to be honest. So I think I'm probably more excited, if I have to choose, more excited about a new pen. Do you make use of pen rests? Not really, but they are useful. I just don't use a lot. I discovered this channel a bit ago and ended up buying a yard lead. No regrets. I am sorry, because that's an expensive, but yeah, I'm glad you like it. I got Ackermann's Delft's Blau yesterday and tried in a fine and medium nib, washed out blue, ugly color. Swapped to a 1.5 millimeter stub and it turned into a beautiful blue with lovely shading. Yeah, that's a drier ink, so that wouldn't work very well in finer nibs, I would say. Yeah. What else? My wife and I have many arguments. What constitutes blue and green, also red and pink and fuchsia? Well, now you know why. The hard problem of consciousness. We simply cannot know what another person thinks. How tricky do you think Dutch would be to learn as an English speaker? Depends a bit on if you only speak English, if you speak other languages too. There are some dreadful sounds in Dutch, like which can be hard, I found, for English speakers. Beyond that, it's a fairly dreadful language, would not recommend. Also because almost no one else speaks it. But there are some fun aspects to it. I think it would be challenging because it is quite different. And it's a Germanic language. Oh, sorry, it's a Germanic language, so it is different from English in that regard. Like different roots, different. It's hard. What else do we have? Kaweco double broad, yeah, correct. That is a nice double broad too. I've had one that was a little over polished, but they are nice, nice nibs. This week, I received a Visconti Homo sapiens crystal dream from La Couronne du Comte. Nib is marked medium, but it writes like a fine or extra fine. It will cost $125 to ship it back to Tilburg from New York City. What do I do? Ship it back. But you have played Italian roulette. So this is the risk you took, right? Like you know that if you buy an Italian pen, that there could be all kinds of variation as to what type of nib you're getting. You can get a broad that's marked as broad but writes like a fine, or a fine that marked fine but that writes like a broad. Hey, you played the game. If you don't like the rules, don't play the game. That's Italian roulette, my friend. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make fun of you, but I've been in that position a lot of times. I've definitely had the fines that write like a very chubby medium, and the broads that write like a medium too. So unfortunately, that is an issue. I wonder if you asked La Couronne du Comte if they could just do a nib exchange. If you are able to remove the nib, Visconti nib units do screw out. Not always easy. If you could just send them back the nib and they could send you another nib unit. Maybe. Then you may save some shipping costs. Edison makes good broads. Yes, Edison, that's Yovo, I think, but they are very nice, and Brian tunes them, right, as they leave. So that's always nice. We are slowly approaching the end of our get-together here. Would you buy a Montegrappa Carl Sagan? That'd be tempting. That'd be tempting. There's a thing called alcohol ink, clearly labeled as such. I don't know its usage, presumably not for fountain pens. I wonder if that would be for something like a refillable Sharpie, because they have that strange smell. But that's just made up on the spot. I don't know if it really is. What else? Can you recommend me an ink that I can use along with the Pilot Parallels highlighter? Yeah, there is highlighter ink. Noodlers used to have a highlight, I think 2 highlighter inks. But I forget their name. I want to say, oddly enough, it was something with pigs. All Democrats are pigs. It could have been, I mean, there's Noodlers, so it could have been, no, I'm just kidding. I want to say something with pig. I forget. But they had, I don't know if they still do. But Pelican has a yellow and a green highlighter ink. It's a highlighter fountain pen ink. I have used that in the Pilot Parallel, that worked very well. Bright yellow, bright green. You know, when I just said the thing about noodles, I was just kidding, right? I was just kidding. I was not serious. It's just their style and branding. I was just poking fun at that. Please do not take that seriously. I did not mean any harm. Penater, Leonardo, and Santini. Would you say they're all comparable in quality, or does one take the lead in terms of quality? Yeah, that really depends. Penater is a mass-produced pen. Leonardo is a handmade pen, and Santini is a handmade pen, but in different ways. I think for me, Leonardo and Santini would be a step above Penater, personally. But between those two, they're a little different. Santini makes the nibs in-house, which you could say puts them a step above Leonardo. Leonardo uses, I thought, Bock nibs. So Santini does that too. Santini, I really think that depends on how you define it. I think all three are nice pens, right? But it depends a bit on what you're looking for. If you want something really exclusive, then I think maybe the Santini pens take the cake. I'm now doubting what the expression is, but do that. Like they win. There is a YouTube channel that focuses on colonial times, and they have videos on writing during the 18th century. I believe the channel is named Townsend or something. That would be appropriate, but I'll check it out. It sounds pretty interesting. Any advice for hunting down a Demetrio Mikado at a reasonable price, below 1,200? not beyond the usual channels. Fountain Pen Network, Virtual Pen Show, eBay. It's often a matter of you have to be in the right place at the right time, right? And that's really all. Yeah. Any suggestions on ink that goes well with the yard lead? Silver is hard to do. Yeah. What I really like in my yard lead is blue blacks. Again, my personal blue black is Waterman blue black. It's a bit light. If you want something darker, there are other options. But I found that to be a very nice combination, personally. I'll tell my wife you said that she's wrong. Good to know. Now you know. Okay. Ever see a nib that is black? Yes. I'm ordering a pen and a black Bock nib is an option. I think it would look great on this pen, but I'm nervous about its longevity ink sticking to it compared to gold plate. I haven't had ink stickage issues. What I will say is that some black pens have tipping material that is also coated in that blackness, and that the black stuff, whatever they use for that coating. Those can be a bit less smooth than nibs that have uncoated tips. So be aware of that. Like, you can easily polish that off with a bit of micro mesh. And some people like that feedback. I'm just saying that is something I have noticed. Yeah. What else? Do you think Dutch is easy to learn for a German native? Those languages are more different than I found many people expect. But I do think you have an advantage. I mean, English, dog, Dutch, Hund, German, Hund. You know, so that there are some more commonalities, I think. What else do we have? We're approaching because we have about 3 minutes. So, how do you find balance and make time for all the things you do? Are you extremely disciplined? Sorry if it's too personal. No, it's not. I think I can learn something from your answer. Well, yeah, this sounds like a bit of a cliche, but you have to make time. You have to make time for certain things. So for me, recording videos, like actual pen reviews, not the things I sometimes do in between, that's often a weekend thing, like a Sunday morning or something, or a Saturday morning I spend on recording reviews. And it does take time. Recording the stuff, editing it, uploading it, posting it, that takes time. And but that's something you have to make time for. And that's just how that works, I think. So that's really it. And yes, there is a certain level of discipline, and I try. Sometimes fail, but that's really it. You have to set aside time for certain things. All right. I think we shall slowly end this. What else is there to say? Did I mention? I feel like I do this every week. Did I mention that there is an answer to the question of, I like your videos. What can I do to support you? That if you go to patreon.com/SBREBROWN, you can support me for as little as $1 a month. Did you know that? Now you do. So there is that option. And I'm always very, very grateful for people who do that. Of course, I'm also very grateful for people who do not do that and watch the videos. I'm just saying, if you had that question, what can I do to support you? That's a pretty good way to support me. So that's always an option, if that is an option for you. All right? No pressure, because I also love you if you don't. But just saying. All right. I should be there next week, I think. And that's pretty much it. I thank you all very much for hanging out with me, because I always have a lot of fun with these, and I hope you have fun too. And that's it. I wish you a very lovely Sunday, or what is left of that, depending on what time zone you are in. I'm assuming that I'll be back next week. All right. Thank you all very much. Bye.